Hello viewers, myself Suresh Kumar Thakur. I'm assistant professor in Law College Dehradun, Uttaranchal University. So in this video, we are discussing about the role of International Committee for Red Cross in the development of international humanitarian law. So to begin with, the human treatment now in the situation of the war, that is one of the fundamental principles of the international humanitarian law. Rights of the belligerent forces to injure the enemy during the course of war, that is not unlimited in the international law. Rather, that is regulated by law. There are certain category of persons like the civilians or the persons who are not taking active part in war. They cannot be injured by the belligerent forces. Rather, they are to be protected. And these are the principles of the international humanitarian law. Now there are certain organizations at the international level which works for the realization of these rights of these category of persons, and ICRC, International Committee for Red Cross, is one of the such organization which not only the protects the rights of such persons, but it furthers the rights of those persons and the realization of those rights at the international level. So in this video, we'll start with the role of the ICRC and its foundation. So the foundation of ICRC, it was laid down in 1863 by five Swiss businessmen, and the particularly Henry Dunant was the person who is considered to be the father of ICRC, International Committee for Red Cross. And further, International Committee of Red Cross, it also becomes the founding member of International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement in future. And ICRC, it is also supplemented in future by way of the four Geneva Conventions of 1949 with their additional protocol as well. So ICRC, it was founded on the basis of certain missions it have or certain objectives it have, and the objective or the missions of ICRC, that is particularly, it are manifold. It have a wide variety of missions, including it offers its services to the parties to the armed conflict, including the belligerent forces, the civilians, or the other persons who are taking active part in the wartime, or even if those who are not taking active part during the course of war. It also visits the prisoners of war or the civilians who are detained during the course of war. It search the missing person. Now that is a natural consequence of war, that many persons, even the belligerent forces are there, enemies forces are there, or the civilians are there. Now they may find themselves missing after the war now that gets over. So the ICRC, it also search for those persons. Further, uh, it also carries the work for the transmission of messages between the families of the prisoners of war, the civilians, or the persons who are injured during the course of war. Then it also provides certain basic facilities which are needed to the people during the course of war, like including food, water, medical assistance, and other basic necessity to the civilians and to the other persons who are involved in the course of war. Then it also spreads the knowledge with respect to the international humanitarian law. It also monitors the compliance with the international humanitarian law as and when the war is there. So these are the manifold activities in which ICRC is involved for the purpose of carrying its objectives for which it was formulated. Further, ICRC, it also plays different categories of roles. So when we talk about its role in the realization, not as I have told you, when we talk about the objectives of ICRC, it is not one having a single objective. It is having a wide variety of objectives, and these objectives now they are carried by the ICRC. And to now we are discussing about the role of ICRC in the development of international humanitarian law. And the first one in this category is the role of ICRC in war. As I've told you, whenever the war is there. Now, ICRC plays an active role for the minimization of the danger to which the peoples they may be exposed during the course of war. It also prevent and put a stop to the abuse to which the people may be subjected during the course of war. It also draw the attention of the world community or the international community to the rights of the persons during the course of war, and those rights and those voices of the people regarding their rights that may be heard. ICRC it also works for that. Now it also bring the assistance to the people who are involved during the course of war. After this, it comes the role of ICRC in assistance for the conflict victims. So the ICRC role now it also plays its role before the war begins or these kinds of activities begins, and it also carries its activities during the course of war as well as after the course of war. So even if the war is there during the course of war, it also tries to make certain facilities available to the people who are involved in the war activities, or who are injured during the course of war, or who are in need of those particular facilities at the time of war, and certain basic necessity including food, including medicine, including certain essential services to the people that is provided by ICRC at the doorstep, including the healthcare facilities, including the other medical aid that is provided by ICRC at the time of war. Then after, the third role which is played by ICRC, that is the role of ICRC in the development of international humanitarian law. Now, whenever there are law is a category of subject which is ever changing subject, and so is the international humanitarian law. So as and when the ICRC it feels the need that there is certain change in the international humanitarian law, or the law which is about the war, or the how the war activities that is to be conducted. Now if there is any change, ICRC realizes those change, and it also works for the those change to be implemented in the international humanitarian law, to prepare the drafts, to submit the drafts, to organize the meetings. Now all that comes within the purview of the ICRC. After that, the fourth role which is played by ICRC, that is the role of ICRC with regard to the restoration of the family links. As I have told you, ICRC in the missions of ICRC, I have told you that there certain missing persons may be there during the course of war. So whenever these missing persons are there, the people get missing during the course of war, including the belligerent forces and including the civilians. If they get lost during the course of war, ICRC it do not only provide certain basic facilities to those people, but it also works for the restore restoration of the families, to work to get those families together, to search for the missing person, to get the assistance to the families as well as to the persons who are missing, and to get those families again back together. That is also I see one of the role of ICRC. After that, ICRC next role of ICRC is the ICRC role in ensuring respect for the humanitarian law, international humanitarian law. So ICRC, it is one of the fundamental role of ICRC to to work for the respect of the international humanitarian law. When we talk about the respect of international humanitarian law, we talk about the role of ICRC in making a realization of those particular rules which are laid down by ICRC. As I told you that ICRC it is supplemented, or the international humanitarian law it is supplemented by the Geneva Conventions of 1949, including their additional protocols. So ICRC it also works for that. That's the law which is laid on by in these various conventions in the collectively which we know as the international humanitarian law, that is realized, that is put into application by the various states at the international level whenever there are certain war is there or armed conflicts are there, whether that is at the international level or within the states. Each and every time the ICRC it works for that the realization of international humanitarian law that must be practiced by the states. After that, the role of ICRC, it also carry its activities in the preventive actions. Now, ICRC, it do not work only during the course of war or after the war gets over. It also works for the preventive actions for the purpose that the warring activities or the wars or these must be minimized, put to the minimum. As the war, it it comes with the death and destructions altogether. It may the parties or the people who are affected during the course of war, they may be very adversely, they may be affected by the course of war, which is evident by the history. If we go into the history and see how death and destruction the war has made in the past years, now we will it will be evident to us that the wars, they are never good for the humanity. And this is also one of the objectives of ICRC, to work for that and to work for an agency which not only works during the course of war if the wars get started or gets over at that time, but also it also works consistently for the prevention of the wars, at the starting. So this is it in this lecture. Thank you for watching. That's it. Thank you.